Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus. I'm your host, Tim Klausler, with the Center Square's Western Washington reporter, Spencer Pauly. Spencer, we're here to talk about some vacancies on the largest city council, or the city council representing the largest city in Washington state, Seattle and Spokane, both of our regions.
We're going back and forth here, Tim.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your vacancy, when this council member is leaving office, maybe the interim period in between, and when they expect to have this position filled.
Sure. So Seattle City Councilmember Cathy Moore, earlier this month, she announced she's resigning from her position. She cited personal and health reasons why. So her last day on the job will be July 7th. And she served for about a year and 6 months into her term. She was elected and started serving as city council member in January of last year. So now what we're having to see is the third time now, Tim, the third time in about 2 years, I believe, that the city council has had to appoint someone to a vacant council seat. Now, with her last day being July 7th, I'll just tell you right now, applications for her replacement will begin on July 2nd through July 9th. And then by the 28th of next month, council members will vote and see to appoint someone to fill Moore's position. Now, I have to ask you, Tim, you have this similar thing going on here in Spokane, right?
Yeah, so Councilmember Lily Navarrete, she's a part of the City Council's progressive majority in Spokane. She filled a vacancy herself at the start of 2024. After the current city council president, Betsy Wilkerson, she left that position to become council president. So she filled a vacancy herself, kind of voted along the progressive majority lines. But recently she announced her resignation as well, which will be effective June 30th next week. So
okay,
they're expecting sort of an interim period where there will be a vacancy as well. So the application period recently closed in Spokane, and the director of the city council office yesterday said they got 9 applications now. I don't know exactly who those people are or where their political leanings lie, but over the next 2 weeks, the council each council member will take their top 3 candidates, and they'll have an opportunity to interview at least one of them, I believe, on July 10th. And then on July 14th, they'll hold a public hearing. And then I believe they're hoping to fill that spot in Spokane by July 28th as well. So right around the same time. But it's unlikely that it'll change the overall leaning of the council. I mean, she's part of the progressive majority. There's 2 conservative members among the 7. So even if the council appointed a conservative member, it wouldn't be enough weight to really change things in terms of voting. But it is an interesting turn of events because this is happening right before the fall elections. In the fall, there's a few city council members up for re-election. Navarrete was going to be one of them, but she pulled out of that race prior to announcing her resignation. So there will be this 4-month period where you just have a new person sitting on the dais, and then there could be a number of changes, but it's quite the moment of uncertainty.
I would say so. Now, Tim, I mentioned that this is the third time Seattle City Council has had to appoint someone to a vacant spot. Is that the same case in Spokane? Are we seeing a revolving door in Spokane as well of council members?
I'm not so much sure in terms of the last several years, but in terms of the last year, definitely. I mean, Navarrete herself filled a vacancy, and now they're rushing to fill her vacancy. Right. So it has sort of had that effect of the revolving door. The council seems to be taking it with wind. But interestingly, Navarrete cited health concerns as her reason for leaving, as did Cathy Moore. Maybe tell me a little bit about Cathy Moore's political leaning and what she meant to the council. Because from my understanding, the council had a big sort of shift from being more left-leaning, or you had some socialist members, to more of a centrist makeup.
It's definitely centrist, and Councilmember Moore definitely represents that more centrist political ideology here in the city council. Now, she was one of 5 council members that there was part of that turnover last year with the city council, and the whole city council has kind of faced some backlash from a lot of Seattle residents now, from what we're seeing. And when I say that, I'm saying a lot of people don't really appreciate the council's emphasis on public safety, more specifically boosting Seattle Police Department. Tim, how many times have we talked about the divide between Seattle public residents and the Seattle Police Department, right? So that's a big one there. But Moore has gotten a lot of criticism for this and I say this as what I hear from Seattleites, calling her a puppet for corporations like Amazon, big tech companies. But, these are companies that bring in a lot of revenue to the city, is one way to look at that. But she's also accused of being very much leaning towards landlords and not so much rent tenants, people who rent, which is a lot of people in Seattle. So she's gotten a lot of ridicule, and I think it maybe have just pushed her to the edge. And I say that even though she cited personal and health reasons. After she announced her resignation, there was a council meeting in which she basically defended her political career. She started off as a public defense attorney, became a judge, and has worked for the people, she said. And, you just heard it in her voice, the frustration to be accused of these things. And ultimately, I think that's something we can look at and say, I can see why maybe she resigned, although she didn't finish up her term. So that's one thing to think about now. With Navarrete, she was progressive leaning, like you said. I'm curious, what was some of the maybe criticism that she faced? Did she also have some issues?
Yeah, so like we mentioned, she cited health concerns and challenges as her reason for resigning. But during her time, she notably last summer, she pushed an ordinance that many called the Homeless Bill of Rights. It would have made homelessness or housing status a protected class in Spokane. They said it would have helped with employment discrimination and things like that. But the business community came out, where a lot of business owners came out and said, hey, look, you're essentially criminalizing, or not criminalizing, you're making it legal for people that are homeless to just commit crimes in the street, to block public right of ways, to trespass, to use drugs out of the open. You're just saying it's okay because they're a protected class. Now, Navarrete and other people in the council came out and said this isn't the case, but they ultimately tabled the ordinance indefinitely and passed more of a different version, focused more on employment discrimination, which appeased a lot of the residents compared to the original version. But she caught quite a bit of flack for that. And even just before announcing her resignation, with all the stuff going on with the Trump administration's deportation agenda, she proposed an ordinance that would allow the city's park director to designate certain areas of the city as non-city property or non-public property, in a way that the city would be able to prevent immigration authorities from entering that. So she caught quite a bit of flack for that as well. And then right after that, she announced her resignation. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, in Seattle, you have this push where the city is more left leaning, and Spokane is more left leaning compared to the rest of the region as a whole. But in Seattle, you have a more left leaning city kind of pushing out this centrist council member. And in Spokane, which is also left leaning, but you have the county and the larger region, which is largely Republican. You have them. I mean, she cited health concerns as her reason for leaving, but there was pressure from a lot of business owners and much of the community due to the way she voted and the way others vote on the council. I mean, with the council races coming up in November, you have a few more centrist or Republican candidates running against these progressives. Will they have enough leverage to win in a left-leaning city? I'm not entirely sure, especially with only 2 more conservative members on the council, but it'll be interesting to see how things play out. I mean, you have people in Spokane that point to Seattle and say, look, Seattle was more left leaning, and they were able to essentially reform themselves in a way where you have a more centrist leaning council. And they're pointing at Seattle and saying, hey, this is what we need to do. But at the same time, Seattle's kind of going through this trial run, and now they're being pushed back the other way. So it'll be interesting to see definitely what happens over the coming months.
I know it's just this constant shift I'm seeing in Seattle, at least, where we had such a progressive majority in the early 2020s. And, here we are 2025. We're still seeing this more centrist. And now we're seeing push more towards these progressive elections. We had Councilmember Alexis Mercedes Rink, who is a progressive member, get voted by the people. And now we're seeing with the mayor race, we're seeing a more centrist mayor, Seattle Bruce Harrell, trying to retain his seat while an upcoming more progressive candidate, Katie Wilson, is running close behind here. So are we going to see this shift again? And that's always something interesting.
Yeah, we're always looking at the national scene as well and how that reflects. I mean, looking back at 2020, that's when George Floyd, the death of George Floyd happened, and the protests and riots happened after that. And there's a difference between being the mayor and being on the council. A lot of times on being the mayor, you kind of have to stand behind your public safety leaders in those times, which are going to get flack from maybe the people that voted you in for your left-leaning agenda. But then at the same time, you have the city council where maybe some will push for more enforcement, but a lot of times you have people coming out and grandstanding or making these political statements that the city shouldn't be acting like this. But definitely interesting. And I'm sure the Trump administration will continue to play into these races moving forward.
Definitely will.
Appreciate you covering it. Hey, and definitely
appreciate
something.
You, Tim, covering what's going on in Spokane with Navarrette's resignation. I'm sure you'll be keeping up to date with that as well. So, Tim, appreciate you covering that as well.
Thank you, Spencer. We'll hope for the best moving forward. And thank you all for joining us for another episode of Washington in Focus.